All right, now Dr. Henning has drawn this conclusion of all the machinations that Dr. Heiser is using, which are completely irreconcilable with actually a proper reading of anything. This sets himself up as the authority for interpretation, making anyone not him unable to understand and thus be dependent on his teachings. Sound like a cult to you? Sells a lot of books. The Hebrew Bible has many examples, but they are obvious only to a reader of Hebrew who is informed by the ancient worldview of the biblical writers. That's what he says. Oh, apparently that means that these many examples are only obvious to him, since no one other than himself is offering his bizarre interpretations. How can you be consistent? That's what happens when people make up new meanings for words. I argued with an engineer a couple of days ago. He says, you can't go by the dictionary what words mean. Well, dictionaries don't reflect their idea of what a word means. They reflect how words are used. If the great majority of the population doesn't even know about a word, then it's not going to be in a dictionary, because there's no need for people to use that word except a few people that invent the word in a closed society. But when a word gets to be widely used, you can't go on asking people, what does a word mean? They're going to come, I've never heard of that word. But when you have a dictionary, the job of the dictionaries is to reflect the current meaning of words over a greater population, not 10 people. So one guy said he had a crew of 10 people working on the particular discovery, and nobody knew about the 10 people. We don't need to know the meaning of the words unless you want everybody else to know about what the meaning of the words are. So, anyway, Dr. Henning says, I can read Hebrew, and am well acquainted with the ancient worldview of the surrounding pagan nations of Israel, but nothing in Heiser's theology is apparent to me. He's making up his own dictionary, and he's got his own closed society. To remark on his self-boasting, after reading over 1,000 pages of his material, I have not seen him once reference the most basic scholarly text to be informed by the ancient world view, popularly referred to as ANET, A-N-E-T, ancient Near Eastern text reading to the Old Testament. He is also very selective in what he is willing to recognize, and completely ignores the context that refute his presupposed theological view. He admits he uses a few selective points of connection and issues relevant to those connections. By ignoring the full counsel of God's Word in order to select only what fits his presupposed pagan worldview that he wants to force into the Scriptures, he has produced a hybrid religious opinion, just as the ancient Gnostic heretics. We will assess particular points of where his major errors are in future articles. To say the very least, Dr. Michael S. Heiser falls into the category of what the Apostle Paul meant when he wrote, Now I beseech you, brethren, mark them which cause divisions and offenses contrary to the doctrine which you have learned, and avoid them. Well, I've got a great insight into Dr. Michael Heiser's approach, and I don't need to read anymore. He's off the wall. Follow the entire series of Assessing Heiser's Theology. We have Michael Heiser's Gnostic Heresy Part 1, which we just pretty much read, and we have the other parts. I don't think I need to go any further. I don't need to be as expert as I thank our author here, because I already know we're so far off on what God has sponsored and inspired the writers, the 40-some-odd authors of the Bible to write. Why do I need to go elsewhere? Because there's no proof of whether Michael Heiser is right or wrong. He says, I'm right, and you're wrong. This is my point of view. I'm imposing upon it. He even admits that, so we're done.